All right. So Lacey, the first question I have for you is, are you wearing pants right now?
I am, in fact, wearing pants, but a lot of times I'll be business on the top, yoga pants. I am wearing slippers right now, too.
That's awesome. I think that's like the work from home mullet or something like that.
Totally.
Yeah. I do the same. I'm wearing like, a nice sweater and then athletic shorts on the bottom
Yeah.
right now. Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, I'm super excited to have you on the show here today and just dive in and learn more about you and your business and everything there. We've worked together before. We've got a lot of mutual friends and everything. And so I'm intrigued and interested just to learn more. But for everyone in the audience who doesn't know you, know your background, what it is you do, can you give us kind of just a bit more insight on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the director of the Content Direction Agency. We are a small boutique digital marketing firm, and we focus mainly on content marketing in the form of blog posts, podcast show notes, email marketing, etc. So we focus mainly on the written content that would support your content marketing efforts. And we've grown from I started out as just a soloist, a freelance writer, and I've grown. Now we have a team of contractors and employees. I have 10 women on my team now. All but one are moms. We all have kids and work from home to support the lifestyles we want. So
That is awesome. That is super cool. And yeah, a large part of our Lead Cookie team is stay-at-home moms and dads, and
yeah,
it's an amazing part of you can get amazingly talented people when you give them that freedom to work from home and everything like that, and they just jump in leaps
absolutely.
and bounds because to be there with their kids and stuff during the day, it goes so far.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious for you guys, what has the journey been like, or how did you said this started with you as a freelancer? Like how long ago was that, and like
Mhm.
what was this process up to where you're at with a team of 10 now? Like, what did that journey look like?
Yeah. So it's been kind of a long and winding road to get here, but um, about how old's my daughter? About 8 years ago, I was a journalist. I was working for a magazine, hyper local magazine here in Boulder County, Colorado, and I was the food editor and the associate editor at this magazine, which, let me tell you, restaurant reviewer, food editor, great work if you can get it. A lot of fun. But I was also, because we were such a small team, I was putting in 60 to 80 hours a week. I was, when we went on deadline for the magazine, I would be there until 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I got pregnant. And the idea of doing that with an infant, was really not appealing to me. And childcare here in Colorado is very expensive, and especially for infants. So we did the math. My husband and I ran the numbers, and it would have been more than half my salary to put our daughter in daycare while I worked. So it didn't actually seem like a great financial choice to put her in daycare and pay half my salary not to see my kid. So we made the choice for me to quit my job. I did freelance for them for a little while after my daughter was born, but I decided to start a food blog because I was a food writer. That seemed to make the most sense. And also this was 2011, so food blogging was still really on the upswing. It was very much a trend for people to start these lifestyle blogs, and we're seeing people making a ton of money. But what I didn't really understand was the model of food blogging. And so I tried to do sort of a hybrid model, not understanding what I was doing. So I had this food blog. I was posting recipes. It was actually, the blog itself did really well. I got invited to guest post regularly with one of Martha Stewart's websites. I built a list of 1,000 people in less than 6 months. I was doing a lot of things right. And I was trying to sell $9.95 ebooks and making almost no money, because I had also chosen a niche of how to save money going organic. And here's a pro tip: when your audience wants to save money, they don't want to buy things from you. So,
Yep.
so that's what I call my 4-figure year. I didn't make a whole lot of money that first year. My husband took me aside and he's like, "I love that you're staying home with our daughter. I love this lifestyle, and I need you to make more money." Okay, I have an idea. So I said, I'm going to see if I can blog for other people, because I seem to be pretty good at this blogging thing. And it turned out that, yes, in fact, there were other business owners that wanted to hire somebody to blog for them. So that's how I got started. And Yeah, growing the agency was very natural at first. It was, I've never wanted to work more than about 20 hours a week in terms of being a full-time mom at the same time. So when my 20 hours a week got full, I just kind of called a friend and was like, hey, do you want to subcontract with me? And she was like, yeah, sure. And so then it just sort of grew organically from there. And when we wanted to start offering more services, we brought in somebody who could do SEO and somebody who could do analytics and somebody who could do email marketing and things like that, where I didn't have to try to be Jill of all trades. I could be good at what I was good at and bring in people who were better than me at other things to serve our clients that way. So it's just grown organically in that way.
So I want to hit on a point of that. The 20 hours per week, is that has that pretty well stayed in place throughout all the years of the business, and you're still doing that today, or what does that look like?
On average. I mean, so like if I'm launching something or if we have big projects, I'm not going to tell you I cut myself off at 20 hours. There's certainly been times when I've had to work more than that. But yeah, on average, that's pretty much what I do, especially when my daughter was little and was home all the time. It was like I was working during nap times. And then eventually we, worked out some childcare situations. So I only had 20 hours kid free per month, per week. And then now she's in school full time. I pretty much work while she's in school. So it's like 9 a.m. or so to 2:45. That's my work day. So
that's super interesting. It's I want to hit on that because that's something over the past with like the whole goal of my new business as from the start, I want to build this at 20 hours a week. It's literally the number I put, and I was like, and I'm just going to hire people and take less profits in the short term.
Yeah.
Just to focus on just having that freedom, as I'd rather have something steady and then that runs without me than that freedom. And it seems like you had the kind of this forced constraint that put you into that with kind of being a mom and everything with that. And I guess what other kind of challenges did you hit with just trying to keep, at that hours, for a sustainable longer term pace? Did at times it was just you wanted to do more, or you struggled to do all you could do, or how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I know for a fact that I could have grown a lot faster if I had worked more, obviously. That's kind of a no-brainer. But it was never we just had to tighten our belt, as you say, you just take less profit or whatever it is. When I got started, I was a solo. So everything was pretty much profit except whatever little tiny bit of overhead I had for websites and services and things. And then as we added people, the way I added people was that they get paid when I get paid, basically. So that was how we started out. So they were subcontracting and I would just add a little on the top to cover my expenses and my effort to sell it and, maintain the relationship with the client. But yeah, so I guess it's just been a very much slower growth trajectory over the years. I didn't hit 6 figures annual income in my business until I think I was about 4 years in. And I think the biggest challenge is when everything around you, when you're in this B2B marketing, online marketing space, everybody's 6 figures this and 6 figures that and hit your next million and no. This general hustle culture that's very hard to, it's very hard to exist in that and be a different little beast, because it's okay, well, yeah, maybe. And you'll see somebody's do you want to hit $1 million this year? I'm like, sure, great. I'd love that. But here's my constraints,
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of razzle for that. And there's just something around just controlling the pace or controlling the throttle. It's I'm sure if you worked 40, 50, 60 hours a week and you sent your kid to childcare, you could have more revenue, and you also would have taken a huge chunk of that out of the door to spend in childcare and then not been there. So it's all the trade-offs, and it's
I just had to keep reminding myself of the goal. What was the whole reason that I quit my job and started this business was to stay home with her and be a mom. So reminding myself of that goal, we're not, sitting on a yacht in Greece or whatever, but at the same time, we're comfortable, we're happy. And, up until maybe, I don't know, a year or two ago, I doubled my revenue every single year. And then I hit a point where doubling got harder.
Yeah.
But we've grown every single year since I've been in business. So it's not as though I wasn't making progress. It was just slower maybe than the Facebook ads would have you believe other people are doing it.
Yep. No, I totally get that. And for me, even I don't have kids, but I like literally in the background, you can see I've got a piano here, and I've just been like, I want to like start like focusing on other like developing aspects of
Live your
myself
life.
and learning. And
Yeah.
like, even though I don't have kids, it's like, I'm going to throttle my work to enjoy life more and do that in the short term. And I've gotten into the people who listen to my show for know that while probably know that I've gotten into like the hustle, grow, grow, grow. And it burns you out.
Yeah.
And and at some point you're like, well, why? Like,
Yeah,
why am I
totally.
working more and like wasting so much of my life? So I'm loving hitting on this point because it's a refreshing thing to hear that you've done and sustained this for such a long period of time.
Yeah, I often joke that I'm like the laziest entrepreneur that you'll ever meet, because I'm like, cool, we paying all our bills? I got my paycheck this month. Cool, I'm good.
That's awesome. But with that like being said though, like I do want to dive on like the business side because you are doing a lot of content writing, and I know you also do like a lot of ghostwriting for very big name people who you probably can't even mention a lot of them on this show. And
Yeah, I'd have to kill you. Sorry.
but like you've definitely like become very established in like the space you're in and like scaled up to a team of 10 writers. That's definitely still no small feat. And so I'm curious, like what has been the hard or challenging parts of this, or like building up to this content team that you have into this stable point? Like what has been like the hardest parts of building up this agency?
Yeah, that's a great question. The thing that I still struggle with, even 7 years into this business model, is it's a little embarrassing. But I mean, like I told you at the beginning, I'm an open book, so I'm willing to talk about these things. It's like the cobbler's children have no shoes. So like I am very much out there. I produce my own content. I'm writing every week. I'm doing Facebook Lives, all the things I tell my clients to do, and I still have not found like the one marketing channel that consistently brings in the right kind of leads that I need to bring in. And so like my accountant was actually asking me about this a while back. She was like, you don't spend much on marketing, do we need to allocate some more money there? And I was like, if I knew where to put the money, like if I could find the place to just invest and like drive those right people, I would do it. But I don't know where that is for me right now, so I'm still always testing and trying to see what is the one marketing channel that's going to drive those exact right clients for me. And being on podcasts is a good one, and so like, I've upped my outreach and PR and pitching different podcasts and things like that. But most 70% plus of my business comes from referrals. So just nurturing those relationships, but that's not really something you can throw money. It's not like, oh, I'll just turn on this Facebook ad and make some more money. So
Yep.
it just doesn't work that way for my particular business.
Yeah, I definitely get that. And I know that that's for the just a lot of like service providers, that is the hard thing. And there's one thing that I've learned from doing a lot of it is like there is no silver bullet, and it's just like marketing is this fluid thing of doing a tactic, saturating it, and then like trying something else. And like even like the people that tell you Facebook ads is perfect, what they don't tell you is like you'll still saturate your market on Facebook ads eventually, and then you've saturated your best target people. And so like that's the thing where like I was thinking today that there needs to be like there's like EOS and like the attraction and like these like systems for business owners to run their business, and like there's no one has a great system for marketers to just like think through and like systematically test out channels. I think the book Traction by like well, there's actually two Traction books on frameworks, but one by the DuckDuckGo guys, they just like kind of talk about testing different channels. And like as annoying as it is, it's like I feel like I've never heard of anyone who's like, I found my silver bullet in marketing. It's just like a fluid thing.
Even as a person who does, I help other people do their marketing, and it's like, we reassess every 6 months with the clients because things change, and we have to say like, is this plan that we put in place 6 months ago still effective? Did it do what we wanted it to do, or do we need to tweak it and try something else? Because even something that worked for a long time could, one tweak of the algorithm, whatever it is, one deliverability issue with your emails, anything can can suddenly send it all off the rails, and suddenly your conversion rates drop and whatever, and you could be doing the exact same work, the same good content, and suddenly it's not working the same way.
Yeah, so I'm curious for you as you've scaled up a writing team. Like, how has that process been in terms of just delivering like revisions? I mean, like you're ghostwriting for people as well, so there's like the tone of voice. Like, how do you handle, I guess, just the qualitative aspects and like the revisions and the quality of like with variety of customers and voices and tone and everything like that?
Yeah, I think honestly, I've gotten very lucky in my hiring, to be really honest with you. But part of what we do is we do a lot of upfront. I do a lot of upfront interviewing of the client, understanding their tone of voice. I do a lot of the upfront sort of voice work with the client to make sure I create a style guide for the client that the writer can then use. I record all my calls with the client so that the writer can listen back and see. And then the different writers have different processes. Some of them will just go read everything they can get their hands on that the client has written, or they might listen to the call or whatever it is. And then we really rely on a lot of feedback from the client. I try to prep them and say, like, don't try to be nice. We want you to tell us those first few blog posts, especially like, oh, I would never say this. This word doesn't sound like me. I use more slang. I use less slang, whatever it is, because that's how we're going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is that within a month of writing for the client, they really are doing very little editing. And I think the other part of your question was about like revisions and things like that. I have never edited my writer's work. There have been a few times where we bring in a new writer and I'll ask to see what they turn in for a client for the first couple of posts. But then after that, I just really rely on them and the client to maintain that relationship. And it's worked out really well so far. I've never had a real issue with that. Now, that said, there's been, I can count maybe 2 or 3 people over the 7 years where we just never came to a place of what I'm not sure the word I want. We never were able to get their voice the way they wanted it. Mm-hmm. And, looking back over that, because there's so few, I really do believe that it was because they weren't ready to let it go, which is okay. Like that's cool. It's a hard thing to do. But I really I think we were still turning out good work. It was just that they were really uncomfortable with letting go of it, which is okay. That's how it is. But
yeah, I definitely get that.
For the most part, we get really close. And sometimes the clients are like, I can't believe I didn't write that, or that sounds like me, but better, things like that. So that's what we like. That's where we're going.
So I'm curious, like, because like that's like the dream to get to, I think, for a lot of people, where it sounds like me but better. That's mm-hmm. a compliment. What does those initial interview processes look like into like that style guide? Like maybe like dive into that, as I'm intrigued as to like how you what kind of questions you're asking, what you're pulling out of them, and then how you actually like, what does like a style guide even look like for you guys?
Sure. Yeah. When I got started with this, I honestly didn't realize this was a skill that other people didn't have. And that sounds like, I don't know, arrogant or something, but I didn't know that this was a special skill that I had to be able to sound like somebody else. And so part of it is that when we hire writers, we screen them and say, can you write in multiple styles? And a lot of our writers come from either journalism or a fiction background, which is really interesting. Like fiction makes sense to me because a fiction author has a million people in their head and writing in different voices all the time. Journalism, I think it has something to do with the research and the interview process. Like they mm-hmm. get comfortable with it that way. But when I do voice interviews with a client, I have a list of questions and I ask a lot of stuff about their business at first, because that really helps us understand. We want to know who the ideal customer is, of course. Mm-hmm. We want to know a lot about that, but I also ask a lot more touchy-feely questions like, how do you want your customers to feel when they interact with you? How do you want to feel in your business? What worldview brought you to this business? Like, what do you believe about people? I ask a lot of those things less for the specific answer, but more to get some insight into who they are as a person, because that helps me understand what they do and why they do it, And then I ask a lot of really random questions because it helps loosen them up. So I'll ask things like, if you had a theme song, what would it be? Like, you're walking on stage, what are they playing? Or tell me about your favorite outfit, or, in high school, what were you voted most likely to do what? All these different things, because it helps them loosen up and talk a little more candidly, because that helps me just get to know their personality. And then I go in after that and look at their writings and try to suss out from a grammatical standpoint, like, what is their syntax? What are their little tics, and what are their little verbal things that they do? Do they have little phrases they use all the time? Do they use a plus sign instead of an ampersand? Do they use an Oxford comma? Like, down to the nitty gritty, because that's how, like, their own mom doesn't know it's not them,
Yep.
Do they use long, flowy sentences or lots of short, choppy ones? How long are paragraphs? How long are sentences? How long are blog posts? Are they really informative, or are they more like meandering? Because all of that informs, how we're going to. Anybody could write a blog post. Like, I could come write a blog post for you tomorrow, and it wouldn't sound like you. It would sound like me, right? But if I did the research, I now feel like we can pretty spot on hit it, and it would sound like Jake.
Yeah. And so these style guides, is it kind of like a summary of these like insights or things that you find from like the interviews and the researching, just something so that when you hand it over to a writer, they've just kind of got this to run from? It's almost like a summary of that account and everything.
Yeah. So I start with just sort of like the facts, like, just dumb things you don't think about right off the bat. Like, what's their tagline? What's their actual, like, tagline or elevator pitch? What are some of the stories they use over and over again? I try to get that in the interview. Like, what's their sort of origin story for the business? What are some anecdotes that they use over and over again when they're talking? And then it goes into like the syntax and the grammar, the diction stuff, the tone. I borrow a thing I found. If you ever want to look at a great style guide, MailChimp has theirs published online. You could just Google for it. And they do a really good job of like saying what the MailChimp brand is in tone, like not so much graphics and colors and things, but like, how do you write for MailChimp? And one of the things I loved the most about it was they had this, we are this, but not this. So they would say, like, we're clever, but not I don't remember. No, I'm not going to give you a good example, but like, I do this for my own clients now. So like, for example, we had one recently and she wanted to be sexy, but not lewd, which is a very fine line, right? So you want to have, her brand is sexy, but she's never going to be rude or lewd or crass, right? So we want to say, like, we are this, but not this. And so I do that usually because that gives the writer a really good sense of where we are and where that line is. And then we do include like a blacklist. So I'll always ask the clients, like, what's something you would never say? What words drive you crazy that you're like, oh, I would never, ever say that. So that we kind of, and that's a running thing that we keep going. It's a living document because the writer will learn more. I can only give them a start, right? And they'll learn a lot more as they go with the client and be able to update it.
Nice. That is awesome. Those are super cool. I'm going to have to check out that MailChimp one. They're just an awesome company. And so they're always a great example to look at for many things. That's awesome. One of the things that, I wanted to back on as well is you talked about screening writers for multiple writing styles. And I'm curious, actually, with this team you built of, great writers, and, you guys are not doing like your cheesy, SEO posts of like 5 tips. You guys are writing like really high quality stuff for high quality people. So how do you find good writers, and how do you interview them or test them, or what does that onboarding and hiring process look like?
Yeah. As I said, I feel like I've gotten really lucky. My very first writer that I hired was actually my boss at a previous job. And so I knew she was awesome, and I knew she was great at what she did, but also like had great integrity and all those things. So that was great. But then the other people I've hired have come through referrals for the most part, which has been really awesome. And we've been able to say, we always do a test post. Like, once they get through sort of like the just general, what's your resume? What's your background? Who are you? Kind of stuff. I ask them to write a post for a client. So it might be an existing client, or I might ask them to write a post for me for content direction agency, to see if they can get the voice without a whole lot of prompting. So like, I'll say, here's the client, here's what they do. You can go look at their website. write me a post about X. And then we kind of see like how close do they get? Like if it's way off base, they're probably not a good fit. If it's pretty close, teachable's okay, right? We can talk about teachable, but we want to see like how close do they get to the tone right off the bat. And then we'll just kind of see, like, I look a lot at their clips. Is there diversity in what they've done in the past? Is there diversity in their past writings that I can see right off the bat? So the woman we just hired most recently was very much in a journalistic background. And so like writing for a newspaper is way different than writing for a blog. But if I can see, oh, look what she did for USA Today versus here's what she did for an online magazine, here's what she did for this, and I can see that the tone is very different for these three pieces, then I'm saying, okay, great. She gets it. She's teachable. She understands the difference in tone for different outlets.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that a lot. And for these test posts that you do, is it typically kind of like an actual live post that would eventually go to a client, or do you guys kind of test it with a similar like sample for each and every applicant, or is like, how do you guys, and is it paid or free, or how do you guys handle that?
Yeah. I've only actually done this twice where it's like been opened up to lots of different people. And so the one time where I had the most applicants sort of vying for a position at the same time, my brother-in-law has a medical practice and he had just started. So I asked them all to write a post for his blog, like as a gift. Here, brother-in-law, have these posts. But I do pay them. It's a lower rate than like our regular going rate for a blog post, but I do want them to take it seriously and know that I take it seriously. So we do pay for the test posts at that point. And then, yeah, they are giving us the rights to the post when we do that. So if it's good enough, I would always consider posting it. Like I gave the good ones to my brother-in-law and said, here you go. Here's a gift. Go for it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And then like, how do you manage your team like ongoing? Because you have this team of creative people, and one of the things that's been a big difference for me moving from Lead Cookie into a content company now is you have these creative people, and it's like, do they like the kind of work they're getting? Like, there's all these like much more soft emotional things that come, I think, with hiring creatives. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious for you, I guess, like, what does that look like with this team of writers you have, how you balance that, or just how you, I guess, manage and lead this team?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we do all of our team stuff in Slack. So we're always sort of all in Slack. And I have recently, as of last year, hired Terry, who I was just talking about, who used to be my boss, to be our team manager because I knew she had a skill set I didn't have. She managed a team of like, I can't remember, 8 or 10 editors when I was working for her. So I knew she had this skill set that I don't have and don't really want. Let's be real. I'm not that person that wants to like talk about your progress report or whatever. So, that's been great. And she's extremely helpful. And I love having her on the team to have my back, especially when there's anything that would be challenging for me. Normally, if there's something like, oh, we need to talk to so-and-so about this, she's definitely got my back, and she's always there to help me, because she has so much more experience and skills in those places. But it's been a little wishy-washy as we've grown because I do a lot from my gut. We're trying really hard to systematize more this year. That's definitely been a drive, so that not everything lives in Lacy's head. That's a really bad way to run your business, just FYI. And I kind of try to match clients with writers just from a gut standpoint. Like, I think their personalities would go well together, or this person has experience writing about X, so therefore they'd be a good fit. Like I said, I've rarely had anybody not be a good fit. So that's a nice thing. And then in terms of managing, we've been, as I said, very lucky that the writers we have, for the most part, manage themselves. So they understand, like, I'm turning in a post a week, or whatever the schedule is for this client. I know that I'm supposed to contact the client and get the topics, or we're going from this calendar, or whatever the individual situation is. And for the most part, they just manage themselves. I mean, we did have an issue recently where something just happened but it was nobody's real fault, but some posts got missed. And then the client was like, hey, I think I've got credit for like 4 posts or whatever it was. And we were like, oh crap, that sucks. And so then we had to sort of implement a little more like, can you check in a little more frequently? Can we see a little more of what you're doing? It's been very much learn and grow as you go over here. But I think that's pretty much how it always is, one way or the other, right? You learn as you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so I'm curious in that. So it sounds like, each of your writers is basically communicating directly with the customer, which probably is in a lot of ways great because they can just learn a lot of those nuances and communicate. Like, how do you guys do, I guess, like copy editing, quality control, like anyone checking each other? And then like, does anyone own the client relationship, or just, I'm curious like how that works, because that structure is something we've also been trying to figure out as well, of having like a lead and then the writer or stuff.
Yeah.
Like that. So yeah.
So as we're growing, one of the growing pains we found was as I was adding more services, like when we added, say, an SEO guru or a person who was going to handle social media or whatever it was, all of a sudden, all of these women that are subcontracting for me also have their own businesses, which I can talk about later, but it's been actually a real benefit for us that way. But the problem was all of a sudden, at one point, we had one client who had signed up for all this stuff. And so they were getting emails from like 5 different people like, hey, I need this for your SEO. Oh, good. I'm ready to do this with your whatever. And he was like, whoa, too much, So we had to really reassess. And so in general, the writer is the lead. And then the client also knows that they can always loop me into the conversation as necessary. So it's never become, at least up till now, it has never become burdensome for me to be like the backup for that. So if the writer feels like, hey, this is a conversation I'm not comfortable having or whatever it is, or if the client feels like they would like a little more strategy or a little more whatever, they can always loop me in to the conversation. But really the writer is the lead. And then if there are other things happening like SEO or analytics or whatever, the writer is still sort of the go-to person. And then Terry kind of manages the team to make sure everybody's talking to each other. The right hand knows what the left hand's doing. So she would manage, let the writer know like, hey, the clients ask for SEO keyword research. So Meg is going to be coming in and doing this. Like she kind of manages those internal relationships for us. At least that's how it's supposed to work on paper.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I definitely get that. That's awesome. And then I guess like operationally, I know you mentioned like one of the hardest things was the marketing channels, but operationally, what has been one of the harder pieces of just like servicing clients, working with them? What have been like some of the challenges or biggest roadblocks or just hurdles that you've had to get over just in terms of like service delivery?
Yeah. So as we've grown, the 2 biggest roadblocks I've run into is transferring the information from me to the team. Because I do all the strategy with the client up front and all the voice work and all that kind of stuff, transferring that knowledge to the team or to the writer became a bottleneck. And we're still working that out. So we have a project management software, and so we have a checklist now, and I'm supposed to do these things, and then other people come in and do their things, and it's working pretty well. And it's still kind of like we're still feeling it out as we go and making tweaks. And so it would definitely be hard to scale. Like it would be hard to onboard a whole bunch of clients at once right this minute because I'm still that bottleneck. So until I can train somebody else or have another strategist on the team or whatever, I'm very much still at the bottleneck, which I'm aware of. And so that's sort of probably where we'll go in the next 5 years is how do we clone Lacy? But yeah, so that's been a challenge. And then the second one would be capacity, because a lot of the women I hire have their own businesses, their capacity fluctuates. So once they are on with a client, that's great. And they know it and I know it and that's all good. And that doesn't change. But as I'm like having sales calls, I may or may not have a good vision of how many writers we have available. So, somebody could be like, well, how soon can you start? And there's this pause moment for me, like, I don't know. Let me get on Slack real fast to answer that for you. So we're actually in the process of like trying to come up with a tool or a system of some kind. What I'm trying to balance is how do I make it not burdensome for my team to keep that updated? And how do I keep it something that I can look at a glance and be like, yes, we can do that project starting next week. We haven't found that tool yet. I have a friend who builds amazing things in Airtable, and I just have to save up enough money to pay her to do that because she had some great ideas. But yeah, for right now, like we're doing incredibly low tech. People update their Slack statuses with their next available date, so I can roll over their names on Slack and see like, oh, she's available next week or whatever it is. That's not gonna work forever. That's definitely a Band-Aid. But that's kind of where we're at.
Nice. No, yeah, those are challenges that we've gotten in Lead Cookie, and yeah, I'm curious, like on the transfer of knowledge. What we ended up doing at Lead Cookie is we found the salesperson who closes the deal would ultimately like do a lot of the initial strategy, and then we would a lot of times record those calls and give them to the next team of like our strategists who are essentially our writers, and then we would also have them do like a Loom video just talking through all their notes and everything and all their thoughts for it. And it's a lot of video. It's like a lot of trapped and like that, but it tends to that has worked for us in terms of transferring the knowledge. And so but even with writing, there's a lot more nuance or even things like that. I guess like how are you actually going about transferring that? Is it just recording and like, are you putting together the summary documents, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so I do record everything, but my strategy sessions when we have a brand new client and we're working out, so if they hire me to do their editorial calendar and the whole marketing plan, those calls are 3 hours long. So like for a writer to sit down and watch that video is like, I would be bored to tears. Like I can't imagine watching me talk for 3 hours like that. Like it would be horrible. So I give them the recording so they can scan through it as they want to, or I can even say like, at an hour and a half, she talks about this and it's really important. But I do sort of write a summary. We're using Teamwork as our project management software. So I write a summary in there, and then they'll also have my report that I give back to the client. So I kind of do an executive summary for the client. So they have that to look at. And also the editorial calendar that we come up with is kind of the Bible. So it's like, even if you don't know anything else, here's what we're planning, here's what we're doing, and then whatever else needs, absolutely needs to be conveyed. So for example, if it's like, oh, these people are really, SEO is the main driver, so you have to check the keywords and optimize every time, that would be important. Or if it's like, getting leads on their email list is the most important thing for this person. So make sure you have a strong call to action in every single post, whatever it is, whatever the sort of most important bullet points are, those go in a Teamwork sort of document. And then, of course, if the writer ever wants, they have access to me in Slack or whatever all the time, so they can clarify.
Nice.
Well, not all the time. I'm only around 20 hours a week, but generally.
Yeah. Exactly. And then with like the other point you brought up, the team of writers. So it sounds like a lot of them are contractors. They've got their own businesses. This isn't their full-time thing. And I guess, do you still have like a team stand-ups every week where everyone gets together, or like how do you manage that with a bunch of team members who are essentially contractors but like pretty regular with you? Like what challenges has that made beyond just the capacity piece?
It's interesting because that was one thing Terry brought up to me a lot. She's my only actual employee other than myself. And she was like, I'm not sure how to manage contractor. She like, that was a hesitancy for her when she was taking the job, because she's like, they're their own business owner. Like, how do I manage? So we've felt it out as we go. But I find it's been a real benefit to us because these people all understand what it's like to run a business, or at least to be a freelancer in that way. So they have a certain understanding for like what we're going through differently than just, your average employee might. They have a different sense of what that's like to run a small business, which has been a huge benefit to us. And so to answer your question more specifically, we do not have weekly stand-ups. We do check in on Slack, and then we do have quarterly team meetings where we all show up in Zoom, because we're across 4 different time zones. So and all over the country. So I would love for us all to like be in one place and share a meal at some point, but that's not that's not where we're at right now. So we do quarterly meetings that way, where we can just kind of like anything that the whole team needs to talk about is there. But otherwise, we just sort of check in individually and keep together on Slack. I'm really actually very proud of how our Slack channel has become very supportive and very much a community. Like we've started doing I started encouraging people to like celebrate their wins in there. And what's awesome to me is that they've started celebrating their wins, whether it's a CDA win or not. Like, so even if it's their own business, like I launched my new course and I sold 50 spots, and we're like, yeah, that's awesome. Like we're all very supportive of each other, it just feels really good. And we also have a random channel that feels like a water cooler where we just put gifts and funny shit that happens. And it's amazing. It's like, it's really become, I'm very proud of the fact that we like have this team culture, even though they all have their own individual, very small business. Most of them are like solopreneurs. So they're not running their own teams necessarily. They might have a VA or something, but it's not a huge team, of different. That would be, I think, too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's awesome. We do the win wall kind of thing as well on Slack, and it's like my favorite spot to look at. Like a lot of the channels, really I don't look at all the channels when they turn white unless I'm tagged. But if it's the win wall, I'm always checking because it just like makes me happy.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, cool. I guess, as we get kind of to wrapping up here, any other just kind of final takeaways or just anything else that's been just really helpful or impactful for you in your journey that as you've come along, that's just big learning that you'd want to share with others?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing that I would want to share is like is actually something that I did wrong a few years ago. Like, I thought that the only way to scale my business, I bought into the thing that the only way to scale was to have a one-to-many option of some kind. And so I spent a good deal of time building a course and trying to market it and launch it and do all those things. And, it was objectively successful and a lot of work and not a huge return on my investment of time. Like, I had this launch, I believe this was like the end of 2016. So I had my whole annual goal was to like increase the percentage of my revenue that came from my courses and my products. And so I had this big launch at the end of 2016. I had this big goal of selling, I can't remember exactly, like 50 spots, let's say it was, in my course. And I got to the end and I did this whole big thing and I sold 45. And I was like, devastated. Like I was beating myself up and it was terrible and blah, blah, blah. And then I happened to get on a call with the sales expert. And I was telling her this, like, oh, I did everything right. I thought I did everything right. And I only sold 45 and I didn't know what, blah, 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 blah. And she asked me to like my conversion rates. And I was actually converting really high for average, right? Average conversion rate for a course is like 1% to 3%. And I did something like 5%. I honestly just didn't have enough leads in the top of my funnel to hit my arbitrary goal that I had thrown out there. And I was like beating myself up. So that was when I kind of decided, okay, you know what? Like emotionally, that was not the right way for me to go. And I'm going to stick to one-on-one. But I didn't understand really that there are ways to scale that don't involve courses and launching and that kind of model. And so I'm really glad I figured out that like the agency model was a better way for me personally to scale my business.
This is awesome. Literally, like in the intro of this show, I added this like probably like 20 episodes ago. I started saying like, if you're sick of like people telling you how to get rich selling ebooks and video courses and you want to build an actual business, then like this is the show to listen to. And so like that is literally like what you're saying. It's awesome because it's right. Like I got trapped in that too, and I did a whole thing, and I made like $2,000 when I sold my course, and it was like endless amounts of work. And then I was like, oh, or I like it's just like there's people that do it and they do good with
and they
it,
do it well, and I'm not one of them.
I
mean, I actually really like supporting other people who launch, like when they have a product that sells really well, a membership site or a course or whatever it is. our service is a great fit for that. Like, I actually really know how to help people sell through content that way. And it was really bad for me. And the other thing that happened was that I attracted a completely different audience than the ones that would buy my services.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still feeling the repercussions of that, years later, that the people on my email list, the people who follow me on Facebook, like me a lot, and they comment and they, like my Facebook posts, and they're never going to buy my service because that's just not where their business is. So I spent all this time and effort marketing to the wrong people, basically.
Yeah, there's a path forward, that whole avenue, but I think it's like, if you're early on and you're getting going, it's probably not the path. It's the path for people like who have established businesses and want to add like a new channel of revenue to it versus like doing it from the start. So
I agree totally. I think we've been sold a bill of goods by a lot of Facebook ads that like, oh, build a course, you could make millions. Well, maybe, but it's probably not from scratch where you're going to start.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, Lacy, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and share all this today. Absolutely amazing. For anyone who wants to find out more about you, your agency, or read more of the content that you're putting out there or anything, where can they go to find you online?
Sure. They can go to lacyboggs.com or thecontentdirectionagency.com. They go to the same place. And I'm on there all the time on my blog, and you can learn more about our services and reach out to me at lacyboggs.com/undercover. That's the best way to get in touch if you are interested in having us pretend to be you on your blog.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time, Lacy. I appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you.